first one is about setting goals and giving fortnightly feedback. And they did an absolutely fascinating study, and I know I'm a bit geeky when I talk about fascinating studies, and people are like, well, how fascinating can it really be? What they did was they took a group of households and they encouraged them to increase or improve their energy efficiency. And in the first two groups, one group was set a goal of 20% energy efficiency, and they were given fortnightly feedback on how they were doing. The other group was set a goal of 2%, and they were given fortnightly feedback on how they were doing. And then at the end, they went to measure how much energy efficiency had they improved. And here are the results. Those with a 20% goal and the fortnightly feedback got a 15% improvement in energy efficiency. Those with the 2% goal, even though they had the same feedback, came in around 6%. Now that's fascinating, we think, partly because it shows the power of stretching goals. But then, if you think about it in a traditional performance management system, how are these two going to be rated? Well, this one fell 25% short of their goal. Not so good. I think we'll have to have a performance improvement conversation. This person did 3 times better than their goal. Wow, they should be getting big rewards for that. But then clearly, as we can see, the outcomes and the outputs are very different. So if we're to get maximum performance, we have to set goals that stretch but don't strain. What is it about how we set those goals? What is it about the faith and belief we give people in them? And how do we compare people with very different sets of stretch goals in order to reward them and recognize them fairly? And there's some important questions here about the training and sharing of goals and how we provide goals and how we measure goals in areas of the business which are less quantifiable, not necessarily sales or customer service, but things that are harder to measure. But also how we treat people based on the outcomes and the outputs they deliver rather than just their performance against a goal that was set, quite possibly in a very different environment and almost certainly based on their own personal capabilities and strengths as well as what the organization needs. So here's an interesting start. Then what they did was they tried exactly the same experiment, but without the fortnightly feedback. So imagine the next group got a 20% goal, but no feedback until the end. Do you think they did better or worse than the group that had a 2% goal with fortnightly feedback? So is the next bar going to be higher or lower than this one? Hands up who thinks it's higher. Hands up who thinks it's lower. If you were playing Ask the Audience, you'd be fantastic. You're just brilliant. I've won £1 million. You're absolutely right. It is lower, so 5%. What's interesting is you set the non-stretch goal and give no feedback, and performance actually gets worse. These houses became less energy efficient. Now, there are loads more studies like this that show really compellingly that setting those goals that stretch, as in, I'm not sure how I'm going to get it, but I kind of believe that I can somehow or other, that those are the ones that will drive the highest levels of performance, and then regularly reviewing that against those goals, how that performance has delivered. So that's a bit about stretching goals and performance. The next bit is about consistent differentiation, and that takes place in 3 forms. The first is about differentiation across a group. Now, some of us may be familiar with this kind of chart. Everyone's doing kind of the same, you know? We've all got 3s, 3.1, 3.2s, 2.9s. We're all roughly at the center. And that's called the centrality bias. Now, I know Jonathan will talk a bit more about this later, but when Paul Pullman arrived at Unilever as the new CEO, he talked about the centrality bias, the fact that everyone was scoring average, and that didn't allow for what was really going on in the business. The second thing we have is when everyone's doing brilliantly. Oh, we've got an amazing team here at HSBC, Diageo, Accenture, wherever it is. They're all wonderful, and therefore what we get here is called the leniency bias. Everyone scores so high because you just can't tell anyone they're not doing a good job because what an amazing company we are. Isn't everybody wonderful? Now, both of these cause a very pernicious social virus, and that social virus is called social loafing. Social loafing occurs when you've got a group of people in a team and one person starts slacking off a bit and they get away with it. Everyone sees that no one's noticed. They haven't suffered for that. So everyone else drops their game a bit as well. When the first person goes, hang on, I'm working as hard as these people, that's dumb, and they drop their game a bit, and so it carries on. And we've all seen organizations, very common, that when you start to let performance not be addressed, which happens with the centrality bias, the leniency bias, you get to social loafing. If you get people to pull on a tug of war, you have 2 people on one end of the rope, they pull with a certain level of strength. As other people join, the first person pulls less hard. So there's a lot that leads to lower performance because of the effect of this. So it's actually really, really dangerous, but we tend not to talk about it. And what we want to be doing is looking for a chart that's more like a normal distribution. It doesn't have to be a specific normal distribution, but more like a normal distribution. So one of the debates that comes up here is, should we then introduce forced distribution? Forced distribution is when we say that a certain percentage of people must fit in each category. That's how it is. Now, the research on here, again, is very compelling. Back to the facts. The research says that if you're an organisation with a very strong leniency or centrality bias, and you basically need to shake the whole place up big time, then introducing forced distribution is a good way to do it. It will cause chaos, upset, rancor, but it will change the dynamic quickly and suddenly. But maintaining it will lead to a drop-off in performance. That the rigidity of that system means that people feel unfairly treated, and therefore they stop working as hard as they would do otherwise. So what we need is guided performance, or guided to the structure. And increasingly, it's about the socialization of people managers talking about different levels of performance and comparing and contrasting how people are doing and agreeing how to review that. So there's something very important about the comparison across a group and consistent differentiation through iterating and through peer reviews. Big question on everyone's mind, little do we know it yet, in the world of management and performance management is, who would you like to be your manager? And that debate is between two very, very well-recognized people. It's the Carl versus the Cole debate. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to clap as loudly as possible for the one of these that you want to be your manager. You know, like X Factor, external votes, we can't afford that. We're low-cost, austerity Britain, manage it all the knee. But what we would like to do is have a clapometer, and whoever claps loudest. So I'm going to briefly make the case for Simon Cowell. He says it like it is. He's no nonsense. He's got great expertise in the area. He won't be moved on something. He looks at what he thinks will succeed, and you know where you stand. Cheryl Cole, lovely, nurturing. Might not be around the whole time, but you know, that's how it is. And when it comes to making a decision between two levels of performance, no, she might not decide, because you're all lovely and wonderful people. So one is going to be lovely, nurturing, supportive. One's going to be quite fierce and quite specific and strong in that. So those who would rather have Simon, put your hands free. Are you ready to clap? Pens away. You know where you can keep the pen. I won't take it back from you. Pens away. Clap if you'd rather have Simon Cowell as your manager. Okay. Clap if you'd rather have Cheryl Cole as your manager. I think the Cowells have it. Yay! So that has defined authoritatively a research sample of this large number that we need more Cowells in management. And I feel a whole new legacy of management training. Simon Cowell will become the new John Cleese of the management development video world. But the point here is about different types of manager, and how what we want to get dynamic performance management to work is consistency across those managers. It doesn't depend who we've got, it depends how we performed. And the third element of consistent differentiation, I said there were three, is also about how the manager changes their mood over time, or changes their assessment of our performance based on their mood. So if they've got a hangover, or they've just come from a really tough budget conversation, does their assessment of our performance change as a result of that, or do they assess us objectively? Now, there's a very valuable psychological concept called self-regulation, which is the degree to which I can control my emotions, i.e. I don't carry yesterday's hangover into today's meeting. And self-regulation is an attribute which is successful in any relationship you have. And I'm sure you all have wonderful relationships, and you're probably very good at it. The research from on marriage, for example, shows that you need a certain amount of self-regulation in the couple together, but it doesn't matter if one person's got all of it and the other person's got none of it. Damn her, him. What is also interesting about this is it's a muscle that you can actually learn to use in one area, and it applies to others. So most psychological concepts, if you learn how to be really quick on Nintendo, it won't make you any faster in the other part of your life. It's just in that area. But self-regulation works across the board. So if you're good, if you do yoga or you meditate or you're good at sticking to a diet, that will then help you self-regulate in other parts of your life. Now, they did a very interesting study on the success of partners in management consultancies. And I know we're privileged to have a few management consultants here, and you recognize this potentially, as to which partners, what the attributes of the partners that outperformed, that were the strongest in terms of billing, clients, success, and so on and so forth, mainly financial measures. And they looked at a number of factors, one of which was cognition. How clever were they? How good were they at thinking? And another which was self-regulation. And what they found was the self-regulation, and here's the picture, was a far greater factor differentiating the top performers from the bottom performers than cognition, the ability to think well. So helping our managers be better at self-regulating is a really important part of getting this consistent differentiation in.